Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and Captain America Sentinel of Liberty, issue number 4. I hated the first 90% of this issue until I got to the end, and I'm so glad I got to the end, because suddenly it made me love the entire issue. I just taught this lesson not too long ago. Go figure. Let's get talking about who made this comic book, because this was a really good one to read. The writers, Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly. Artist, the irreplaceable Carmen Carnero. Color artist, Nolan Woodard, and VC's Joe Caramagna doing the letters. Carmen Carnero and Alejandro Sanchez doing the cover art, and there's a variant cover by Mark Bagley and Laura Martin. Captain America was created by Joe Simon and Jack frickin' Kirby. Okay, everything in its place is a very important message in this, because much like a comedian will tell a joke and then it'll go on with something else and then it'll come back to that punchline again, right? That's what pretty much happens in this comic book. Everything in its place that's crucial to understanding this comic book, essentially, or at least it puts into more context. You can understand it without it, but it just helps. Steve wakes up and goes about his business doing all sorts of cool things, whatever it is that he's going to do, and he starts talking to a bunch of people, and it's funny. A lot of the stuff that happens in this comic book, a lot of the things that are said in this comic book are very SJW. It's very social justice warrior stuff. There's a blue-haired chick talking about how America is a tyranny and it's a horrible place and blah, 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 blah. And you just want to slap some sense into this chick. No, I'm not advocating violence against women. There's always that guy out there who wants to say that. No, but seriously, she needs to be slapped with reality and recognize the majority of immigrants are coming into America and Canada. They're not going the other way. There are very, very, very scarce few immigrants going into any other country. Even then, I just moved from America to Canada. You know what I'm saying? And it was for reasons of marriage. You know what I'm saying? She didn't want to live in the States anymore. She wanted to be close to her parents, and her parents aren't going to move, whatever. But there's a reason why. And if you actually went out and talked to several immigrants, and specifically their parents, you would understand why more people are moving to the States. And we could absolutely have this conversation one day, if that's what someone would, what anyone would like to do. But there is a very, very broad and general scope of multitude of reasons why immigrants are moving this way, not that way. There is no mass influx of immigrants to India or to China or to Russia or to any other place that somebody might say is a world power that is up and coming and blah, 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 blah. It's simply not happening, and it's not because people are stupid. It's because people on average are very, very smart. I love my countries. Love my countries. And they can be improved. But I love my countries. Captain America talks to people who, many of them at least, don't particularly love the country. Like I said, there's a blue-haired chick in here, and it was perfect. It was perfect that she had blue hair. She had the glasses. You can see her doing one of those with the teeth. You've seen those memes, right? It was great seeing that she had so much to say on this. But at the same time, she was also kind of blasé about it. And it was like, okay, interesting. And Steve didn't question some of the things that were said. What does the shield mean to you? What does the symbol mean to you? Somebody actually, an old black guy mentioned, old black guys, let me tell you something. I happen to know a few. And usually very patriotic. Extremely patriotic for good reasons. And this particular guy is very cool. And he says to this dumb blue-haired white chick, you're actually going to diss the American dream in front of Captain of freaking America? It's like, oh, he knows, da 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 da. And then she kind of showed herself to be kind of cool afterwards, right? She has her opinions. You don't necessarily have to hate her for it. You can hate her opinions, but she showed that she's actually a pretty decent enough person, right? Great girl to visit, want to marry her, And then you go to a union representative who is extremely patriotic, but still recognizes some of the bad things that have happened in America. Because America is about progression. And I don't care if you're conservative, liberal, progressive, libertarian, anything else, whatever. You have to admit that America is a progressive nation in so much as, I'm not talking about a Bernie Sanders movement, I'm talking about in the way that we started off with slavery. Originally, it was written into the Constitution. Thomas Jefferson himself, in his own handwriting, wrote down slaves, no slavery. Slavery is outlawed in America. Yes, while he still had slaves, but he was making it, hey, we got to get rid of slavery. And I don't know that too many of the founding fathers said, no, I don't like that, but I know that easily, I think it was 60 to 70% of them. It might have been even 80% of them, particularly the ones from the South, were like, we come from manufacturing. We need this thing signed. We need all of us to be able to sign as representatives, because representatives actually represented back then. Instead of saying, I was elected, so I'm going to do what I want to do. They actually represented. So they said, we cannot sign this because the people will crucify us if we sign this. We have to make it so that other people can make slavery illegal in the future. And it only took 16 presidents to do that. Not too shabby. Not too shabby if I do say so myself. So the Constitution that we have today is actually a rewrite of the original Constitution, which outlawed slavery. Think about that. It's about progression. We do what we can now to get things to pass. It's going to suck for some other people, but everybody can't just come up at the same time because it's simply not reality. If every single person in the world, let's say every single person in the world won the lottery at the same time, you're not going to make nearly as much as one person who wins and helps out his immediate friends, right? So the world progresses in gradations and steps. And I like the idea that a lot of the things that were said in here, including the union worker, who was very patriotic but acknowledged some of the other things that were in there, talked about socialism. Because if there's anything that a union is all about, it's about socialism. But not government-controlled socialism, people-controlled socialism, which is the way that it was intended to be originally by a guy who never had any intention of doing that. Anyway, there was a lot here, and the writers of this comic book, what is it, Lansing and Kelly, these two guys understood that. And I appreciated that. I genuinely appreciate that these guys had a good understanding of social political, if not geopolitical. I don't know, I didn't see geopolitical in here, but the social political ideologies. They had what appears to me a good understanding of that, and I appreciated that. It's very rare to see people who are not just educated, but also fair, not just trying to push their own social agendas, actually being fair. Unlike the other Captain America book, F that book. Maybe it's gotten better, I don't know. Maybe it pulled a story like this one did. The reason why I love this, though, is because with all that was being said and me looking at it and saying, dude, you're shitting on the country, which is just absolutely ridiculous. This greatest country that has ever existed in the history of all countries. We outlawed slavery. Guys, facts are facts. Maybe there's a country in Africa that has outlawed slavery that I don't know about. But to the best of my understanding, slavery is not outlawed, and it's still practiced everywhere in Africa. I know for a fact it's not outlawed and practiced in every Arabian country. In fact, Islam actually promulgates slavery. And I know there's all the many verses that say, free a slave. If you do this, free a slave. If you do this, free a slave. Well, eventually it'll be no more slaves, right? Except, no, it's still in the Quran and the Hadith that if you go to war, then take slaves. That's what you do. You take slaves. Instead of putting them in prisons or doing this, that, and the other thing, you take slaves instead. So it's encouraged to take slaves. Pro, con, positive, negative. In it, there's still the saving of lives. I get it. But at the end of the day, it's not about defend. No, it's about understanding. And Islam propagates the idea of taking slaves. Even if it's argued that it's for the good. And I would agree, it's for the good. It's better than just killing your enemies. But it still propagates the idea of taking slaves. And then they can acclimate to your environment and, assimilate. And then when you free them, whatever. But slavery still exists in Islam. Again, for good or for bad, let people make their own decisions. Slavery still exists all over the world. And I'm not even talking, mind you, I know there's going to be somebody who's going to scream, but there's lots of, sex trade and slavery and all sorts of different things that are happening in America. Okay, but are they legalized? That's the thing. Are they legal? At the end of the day, it's illegal. It's underground. It's not something that's permissible. Just like we could sit there and say, I'm not going to sit here and say America was great and the South was great because we had the Underground Railroad where Harriet Tubman went back and forth freeing a whole lot of slaves. I'm not going to say that's good on America. I'm going to say that's good on Harriet Tubman and all those people who had, because the Underground Railroad actually existed before Harriet Tubman, just so you guys know. But she really made it work because she actually came back to start bringing more slaves through the railroad, through the system. You know what I'm saying? So everybody involved was actually fantastic in there. But that's not a boon on America. That's a boon on her and all the people who were involved. No, instead, that's actually a shame on America that had to happen. But it is what it is. So when I say that slavery was now outlawed in America, I'm not going to sit here and say, but shame on America for allowing illegal slave trade. Nobody's allowing anything. It's illegal. It's not allowed. It's supposed to stop. You want to talk about the prison system? Sure. But if you commit a violent crime or something like that, you kind of belong in there. And yes, you should lose your freedom. Because if you still have your freedom, then you're going to start killing more people. So, like I said, take it or leave it, the pros, the cons, whatever. I think it's better than lining people up and chopping all their heads off. But that's just me. In some cases, maybe that's a better thing. Whatever. There's going to be people who are going to agree and disagree on a lot of things. It is what it is. But these kinds of conversations can be drummed up from the conversations that were had in this comic book. Why are all of these things important? Because if I could go into this sort of a thought process by listening to different viewpoints, and every viewpoint was not espoused in this comic book, make no mistake. There were a couple, and most of them, almost all of them, had major SJW components to it, which is annoying, but again, the idea is that you heard different levels of dissent in here. And we were not actually the target audience in this. Actually, the villain was the target audience. See, there was somebody following Steve Rogers in this story. The guy who was supposed to assassinate Steve Rogers. And what I love about it is because at first I thought it was just, Steve is walking down the stairs and, the ghost of a memory, blah, 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 blah. But it turns out, no, it was actually a bed because you see a couple little things here and there. If you're paying attention, you'll be like, wait a second, that's not a ghost of a memory. That's somebody actually camouflaged. That's like a predator, cloaked and trying to come after somebody. It was very interesting to see that. What was interesting is that Steve knew the person was there the entire time. The whole entire time. Showing that Steve is a badass. He's not just some goof who's going to sit there and, you're going to shit on the American dream and I'm not going to defend it. No. Steve seemed like a simp the entire comic book until the last few pages where he basically says, that stuff that I was asking and all these different opinions, they weren't for me, bud. They were for you. I wanted you to see the different opinions that people have about the country, about the world, about the way that, the country specifically, about the way that things work, about the way that the American dream is realized and understood to be realized, if anybody even understands what the American dream is. Because it could be different things to different people. It's a very special thing to the immigrants who come into this country. Well, into America. This country, also Canada, because it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And the main thing is usually opportunity. That isn't what was addressed in this comic book, though. Instead, it seemed like there was mostly just a bunch of naysayers. That was important. Because obviously this assassin comes from the outer circle. He was sent by the outer circle to assassinate Steve Rogers, to redact him. And in his mind, oh, this is the perfect way. This is the perfect thing. All the things that the outer circle is doing, it's perfect, right? So now I'm hearing dissenters. He didn't need to hear he, she, it, whatever. Didn't need to hear people who believed in the message. He needed to hear people who didn't believe in the message. So he got exactly what he needed. It wasn't about us. This wasn't the writers, Lansing and Jackson, propagating their agenda. Because I hate when that happens. I hate when that happens. I know who Steve Rogers is because he's been established. For decades, he's been established. And I don't need to see a Steve Rogers. Like at the end, Grunwald was amazing, but sometimes he did dumb things like Streets of Poison. The end of the Streets of Poison story where he's just, oh, I don't need steroids. I don't need steroids. Like, dude, that's not Captain America. And those aren't steroids. Like, stop. I know somebody's going to try and correct me. Actually, it was a mixture of Vita rays and steroids and the beta mix. And dude, stop. I know. Believe me. If there's anybody who knows Captain America, it's me. I get it. But they're not steroids. They're not just steroids. Like, no, that's not that. Steve gets into a fight in here, and Carmen Carnero did a great job in this whole comic book, just from having this blended bag. Like, go and see how many times this blended, this Predator type thing appears all over the place, right? But Steve gets into it with this thing, and you have to read it to really understand why Steve realized what he could do with this assassin. Because what he does with the assassin, and I keep on mentioning the Predator. There's one scene in the Predator that's a big time meme. You know what I'm saying? And here's the other half of it. And I really liked this issue a lot. I really did. Because what he does, I'm not going to spoil the ending of this comic book, but what he does, like, first off, the fighting in this. Look, I've been in jiu-jitsu for 5 months now. I know an arm bar when I see one, all right? That dude took the arm bar, and yeah, he had himself a souvenir. Anybody who's in jiu-jitsu, you know the term souvenir, right? You're going to tap, or I'm going to take your arm home as a souvenir, right? That was fantastic. So Steve's physicality and his brutality, his knowledge, his combat expertise, it came into play in here. There was a fight. Woo! But what happened at the end was just, that's what I'm talking about, because he allowed an assassin to follow him the entire time. Why? Because it's not just the assassin trying to understand who Steve is. It's Steve doing the same thing with the assassin. I don't clap very often for a comic book, man, but this is like watching the end of a movie and the good guy wins. And I'm just looking at this like, God damn, this was good. This was very well executed. This was so well executed. Wow. Fantastic comic book. Genuinely enjoying the hell out of this. Even the stuff with Bucky that happened very early in this comic book. I was really down on Bucky for the first 3 issues because, like, dude, this guy's getting his butt kicked. He's kind of a simp. He's, whatever. No. By the time that the end of this happened, in the beginning of this comic book, Bucky, Captain America shows up to talk to Bucky. And he's just, hey, I'm here for you, bud, whatever. And Bucky, they both realize that they've both been targeted for assassination. And Bucky's not going to involve Cap because he's thinking, I've got to do this alone. Cap shows up to let him know, I'm with you to the end of the road. Without saying that line from the MCU, I appreciate that, I do. Because he implied it, but he didn't say it. The comic books don't need to be following the lead of the movies. With all due respect, to hell with the movies. All right? Winter Soldier, definitely one of my favorite movies of all time. It might be the top. I don't know. I don't really look at movies that way. But amazing movie. Absolutely loved it. That being said, dude, this was like that, but they didn't actually say that line, but you still got it implied in it. So I appreciate that. Comic books don't need to be following the movies. The movies are supposed to be following the comic books, right? That's art imitating better art, in my opinion, especially when Carmen Carnero is concerned. That being said, I really dug on this a lot. I love the idea that, they emphasized Bucky and Captain America's relationship on here. The throwaway line, thanks, Cap. Thanks for doing all these things for me and my son, Cap, the whole summer and beyond. And even right now, you're my second favorite, Cap. I took that as more of a joke. Because Cap's like, yeah, Sam Wilson's my favorite, Captain America also. Yeah. That's the Falcon. I don't want to hear about Torres, man. That's the Falcon. Captain America is Captain America. So, is what it is. Really, I think that was more just like an inside black person joke. You know what I'm saying? It's a black woman who said, Sam Wilson's basically my favorite Captain America. Yeah, that's cute. What has Sam Wilson done for you lately? Right? But the Cap and Bucky thing. Here's the reason why I really like this. And I'm going to say something that's probably going to offend a couple of people. It is what it is, especially if you're more of the SJW propensity. I'm hoping this kind of pulls you out of that a little bit. Look, I get the idea of the people with the whole yaoi mentality. Oh, I want to see Cap and Bucky get together. I want to see you calm down. That's what I want to see. And seriously, not for me, for you. Sexuality can't be your entire life. It can't be. Look, get out more and actually make friends. I have friends. I have a lot of friends. I don't think of them sexually. I don't think any of them think of me sexually either, even though I am a sex god. I mean, look at me, But all joking aside, you have to have friends, like good friends you can count on. Dude, I have close friends super close friends in jiu-jitsu. I wrap them around my legs. They wrap me around their legs. Nobody's thinking sexually. Every so often I'll crack a joke because it's funny. You know what I'm saying? My buddy Ken will crack a joke back every so often. You know what I'm saying? But for the most, and Daryl too. He'll crack a joke too once in a while. He laughs a lot at mine. But anyway, it's the idea that it's not gay. It's about learning how to defend yourself. It's about learning how to stop someone without punching them in the teeth a couple of times. You know what I'm saying? Safely stopping someone. Look on the news all the times that jiu-jitsu, somebody who's into jiu-jitsu is able to stop someone. Even if you're into judo, you still got to slam somebody on the ground, Jiu-jitsu is the safest of the martial arts because therefore you get to train a whole lot more like actual sparring. There's only but so much sparring you could do with boxing and karate because you got to have the pads on, and at some point you got to stop before you wind up getting, CTC, is it called? Whatever. Some kind of a concussion, minor or, God forbid, major, or a skull fracture or edema. Like, dude, sometimes you need to just stop, right? But jiu-jitsu, you can go all day long and really get your practice in a lot. Is it the most effective thing in the world? Absolutely not. If someone's punching you in the face, I mean, you could try and go for a takedown, but for the most part, you're probably going to want to punch them back or learn how to block, Definitely take up boxing, take up, even a karate, one of the karate styles. It's better than not knowing, But for the love of God, jiu-jitsu is one of those things where you can hold somebody down and safely stop them. And if you have to, you could break their arm or their leg or their neck, You know what I'm saying? You can choke them out. There's lots of ways to stop someone. And you always have the confidence, because of all the times you've been sparring, to be able to take them down safely in a way that doesn't injure them. So the most a cop could say is, especially Canada, where essentially you're not allowed to legally defend yourself and everything is considered a crime here. You can stop someone with jiu-jitsu and then, explain to the cop and a judge, I didn't hurt the person, nothing long-lasting, but I stopped them from doing such and such and such. And look, here's all these witnesses who are saying they did da-da-da-da-da. So that's all that happened here. As opposed to, yeah, their face looks like a hamburger because I had to punch them a lot of times. And a couple of times, a knee and a kick. So anyway, what do you call it? It's good to have... went into a big rant about jiu-jitsu. See how much I love this stuff? But it's good to have friends that you can count on and it not be some kind of a relationship thing. You know what I'm saying? Like a sexual relationship thing. There's the love of your domestic partner or sexual partners, whatever. And I'm not here to question your deviancy. But there's also the love of your parents, which should not be sexual. I don't know if I have to say that. There's the love of your friends, which probably shouldn't be sexual, male or female, no matter what you are, whatever they are. There's the love of your mentors, which gets really weird and obfuscated if you turn it into sexual things. There's the love of your animals, right? Your pets, which, dude, do I have to say it? There's the love of your children. Bro, now we're talking child social services calls. There's lots of different loves in the world that you should have, right? And the love of my friends and the love that I have for my friends, it's very crucial to have that. It's another component of what makes us complete, If you can't control yourself sexually, then you are by definition a deviant. You have deviancy, various levels, gradations of deviancy in your life, and that has to do with your willpower, your self-control, right? You have to have multiple different kinds of relationships, not multiple sexual partners. You want to do that, that's on you. But you have to have other kinds of loves in your life to make you a complete and whole person. Steve Rogers has that with Bucky. He has that friend that he can hug, that friend that he's still mentor to, but he still learns a lot from, which is every mentor-mentee relationship. The greatest mentor-mentee relationships are the ones where the mentor is learning just as much from the mentee. It's great that Steve has that in his life. He has a different relationship with Sam, right? He has a different relationship with the loves of his life. He has a different relationship with the memory, at least, of his parents. He actually does have a kid who apparently we're going to see again pretty soon, and I'm really looking forward to that because it's a major part. Was that the Remender series, I think, where he got a kid? Steve is probably one of the most well-balanced characters in the entire Marvel universe, in the entire comic book universe. I think Superman would probably be the only one who has a better, familial relationship because his parents are still alive, depending on who's telling that story. I love it. I love it. That's the kind of stuff that you need because there are a lot of young people who are getting into comic books and they need role models. And a role model can be a superhero because as long as they're coming from people who are a stable mind, who are actually writing these comic books, who are actually creating these comic books, these stories, right? If you have a stable mind, you are a mentor to some people. People like me, I'm just looking for a good story. But having a comic book where, I understand that, flying around or throwing a shield or a batarang or whatever and knocking somebody out, and stopping the bad guys, hey, it is what it is. But we know the heroes from the villains because the heroes don't kill, right? If we have a Captain America who just willy-nilly goes around and starts killing people, that's not Captain America. It's not that it's not my Captain America. No, it's been established. That's not Captain America. Captain America doesn't kill unless he has to. He's killed. He's killed plenty of times. He was in World War II. He's killed. But he doesn't make a habit of going around and killing people, right? That's just not what he does. That's not his first resort. That's not his 10th resort. It's quite literally his last resort. Unfortunately, with a lot of people, their last resort is also their first resort, vis-a-vis the Punisher, Wolverine, people like that. They're not heroes. They're super. They're not heroes, though, right? They're just regular old people who are going around with powers or not, and they're murdering people. It's not really role model mentality. There's a reason why the hero's journey is crucial. And the most important aspect to a hero's journey is that there's a hero. Captain America has that hero's journey backstory. Let's maintain him as a hero, right? And one of those ways is to keep him a good, honest, true, blue-blooded American. It was back in the day when we used to look and see blue in our veins and think, oh, well, blood is naturally blue until it gets exposed to the air. Then it's red. No, it's always red. We just didn't know back then. Now we know. Anyway, guys, I really like this comic book. Think about all that it pulled from me, right? And I hope that more people are reading this comic book. And I hope that it stays good like this. I hope that we keep a solid Captain America who knows who he is, but still willing to listen to the people. Because let's be realistic, right? I'm a strong believer in the American system. Very strong believer, because it's the absolute hands down best system that is out there. There is no system better. At the same time, I can still recognize all of its flaws. It's one of the reasons why we're still voting. We're still trying to make changes. We still need social change. But at the same time, I don't believe in riots. I don't believe in a lot of the bad things going on. I just heard that there was a Batman story where Batman looks down and sees a riot, and he just keeps on going. He says, they've got insurance. That's not a case where it's not my Batman. No, that's not Batman. It's already been established. Batman would at the very least drop a smoke grenade, saying, and get these people to disperse. Like, people and their agendas, dude. No. You got to look to the hiring process and make sure you're not just hiring somebody who's famous or whatever, No, someone who actually knows how to write a good story. You need someone who knows how to write a good, appealing story, and someone who's going to understand the character in and of themselves. Guys, that's really all I've got. Like the video, watch an ad. I'll talk to you later. Professor Bell, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.